Hey everybody, this is Sarah with the channel Johnsons for Jesus, and I want to talk to you about how God can restore relationships in your life, because that is exactly what He did for me, and it is only God that relationship was restored. First of all, it doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter their age, it doesn't matter when the altercation happened, if there was an altercation, where you and that person lost touch, what the circumstances were, what the circumstances are. As long as that person is alive, God can restore that relationship in your life. So I'm going to talk about how God restored the relationship with me and my dad. My parents were not married. They did not get married. They only have me between each other. And so my mom, she raised me as a single parent with a total of 3 kids, me being the baby. And so I used to see my dad when I was a little girl. And the only problem was he used to take me places and around people he shouldn't have been taking me. And, my mom had told him, like, don't do this. Don't take Sarah to these places around these people, but he wouldn't listen. And so my mom completely stopped him from getting me as a child. And I completely applaud her, because I think that was the correct decision to do to get me out of those different environments. And so I went years without seeing my dad. And whenever I would see him, I believe there was a sense of hatred that I had toward him because he wasn't there. I didn't have a dad. And so as a child, that's very difficult when a little girl or a little boy doesn't have a dad, or their dad isn't the father figure that they should be, and they see other kids at school when their dads bring them to school, and whenever their dads go on field trips with them, and just seeing that and seeing the love they have and knowing that you don't have that, it hurts, it bothers you. It's something you wish and long that you had. And so I remember many times as a child going to sleep at night, crying myself to sleep because I didn't have a dad. And even though I had a dad, but being so young, I didn't know him. I didn't wish that he was in my life. I just wished that I had a dad, because I didn't. And there was a gentleman in my family who acted as if he was my dad, but obviously, not being my actual dad, he was not there all the time. But whenever he was around me and my family, it really helped me, because it felt like I had a dad. He treated me like his daughter, opened up his heart, his life, and his wallet to me. And that was only a God thing. So I'm thankful for that man. And I still see him as a father figure to me. But so getting back to my dad, I didn't have a relationship with him. And so up into my teens, I still didn't. And around the age of 18, I began to start seeing my dad with my mom there, because I didn't have a car yet. And, that was always kind of difficult, because, they didn't have a good relationship, even though they weren't together. And so I could only kind of begin to have a relationship with him whenever I would see him. And so as time went by, when I got my own vehicle, I would go and see my dad. I would go spend time with my dad. And so my dad and me, our relationship began to grow. And then it just began to get better and better. And I finally have my dad now, and he finally has me, his daughter, his little girl. And so, we've talked about how he wasn't there and he wasn't around. And, he would just break down in tears and crying because, my husband explained it to me like this. That time he wasn't there, he wasn't declining me because he didn't know me. He now that he knows me, he loves me dearly. I believe I am my dad's favorite person in the world. I don't know of anybody else that he praises more than me. Not that I'm asking for it, but he just loves me so much. And he sees my relationship with God. Out of all of his children, he just talks about how my relationship with God is how it is. And he literally praises me in front of so many people, to the point where I don't even know what to say. Whenever he talks to people about me, he tells me how so much he loves me. And we actually have a good relationship. In fact, whenever my husband walked into our church at the time, I went to my dad. I'm like, Dad, go over there. Nobody has said hello to this man that's new. And so my dad went and did that. An altar call came, and my dad was the first person to meet my husband and introduce me to my husband. My dad, who wasn't there for years, God used to introduce me to my husband using my dad. And so, even though now we have a wonderful relationship, it is a sweet, precious relationship. I am very grateful to God because God restored it. But it has taken me time to fully forgive him. And I say that because me and my dad have now had a good relationship for years now. But up until the beginning of this year, 2026, it wasn't until this year I was able to fully forgive my dad for not being there. And you might wonder why it took so long. I have a good relationship with my dad. I've had a good relationship for years. How come I have not fully forgiven my dad? And the only answer I can give to that is, even though I have a good relationship with my dad, I would look back on whenever I was a child and a teenager and I didn't have him there. And just looking back, it was just so painful because I could still feel the hurt. I could still feel the pain. And so it wasn't until the beginning of this year that I have fully forgiven my dad. I no longer have pain and hurt when I look back on my childhood. And like I said, this is a relationship that only God could have restored. And it was only God that restored it. My dad knows Jesus as his Lord and Savior and is so grateful for me. And like I said, it is all God. So with that being said, if you don't have your dad, if you don't have your mom in your life, if you don't have your grandparents in your life, it's not too late. Talk to God about it. God knows if they're toxic or not. He may choose to keep you away from toxic people. So if he doesn't allow the relationship to occur, it could be because it would be just too toxic. They're not ready for you. You're not ready for them. They're just not in a good mindset. In fact, I told my dad, because, we've talked about him not being there a few times and how that was. And again, he's just crying about it and just sorrowful about it. And I looked at him one day and I said, I don't think it was meant until now. Because from my understanding, my dad was slightly a different man before our relationship started. And he agreed and he understood and he thanked me for that. Because I truly don't believe it was meant for me and my dad to reconcile our relationship until this time. I wouldn't have been ready. He would not have been ready. And so with that being said, God can do it. Don't give up. Don't lose heart. Don't lose faith. God can restore the relationship in your life.